Your source for everything paranormal. Parax.
Throughout the ages, history has been altered by word of mouth and the misrepresentation of those who might not have been present when some of the world's most significant events took place. Channelers Barry and Connie Strohm bring through the spirits of those who actually witnessed or took part in these historical events and lets them tell their stories in their own words. Welcome to Channeling History. And now, here are your hosts, Barry and Connie Strohm.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Channeling History. We're the only show where we speak to the souls that made things happen, and we're brought to you every week on the Parax Radio Network. Each week, we try to channel an individual that helped change history. I'm Barry Strohm, your host, and I'll be doing the channeling tonight.
And I'm Connie Strohm, and I would like to thank you for tuning in to our show this evening. This week, we will be interviewing Andrew Carnegie, one of the greatest American industrialists. He was also one of the greatest philanthropists, essentially giving away his entire fortune to help others. He funded over 2,500 libraries, Carnegie Hall in New York, Carnegie Institute, and much more. And he will be answering some very interesting questions this evening. Our chat room here on ParaX is open and we welcome any questions. Of course, we do have a list of prepared questions, but we also like to use ones through the chat room.
Okay, we always try to give a small disclaimer when we begin a show, as we have no idea how some of the spirit guests will answer. So the opinions or statements voiced on our show are the channeled words of the spirits and do not reflect our opinions, those of the Parax Network, or of our sponsors.
Okay. Last week, we had a very interesting interview with the famous Roman Emperor Mark Antony. He spoke of the assassination of Julius Caesar and his relationship with Cleopatra. As always, we beg you to please tell your friends about us so we can continue to grow our listeners. Okay,
tonight you will have the opportunity to submit some questions to one of the most famous industrialists in American history. Also one of the greatest philanthropists of all time. During his lifetime, he contributed over $350 million. And in today's dollars, that's over $5.5 billion. After his death, another $30 million was given to foundations and charities.
All of our previous shows are available on our YouTube channel that's in the name of Barry Strohm, and Podomatic.com under the name of Channeling History, where you can download them or just listen to them for free. It's also available on Audible, iTunes, Spotify, and most of the other popular platforms. When we begin our channeling tonight, I will ask the questions and Barry will answer them in the words of Andrew Carnegie.
Okay, if you've listened to our show, you know that before we channel, we always say a prayer of protection. There's evil out there, and we want to make sure that we're protected when we open a channel to the other side. So Connie's now going to say the prayer, and we will get on with channeling our favorite guest.
God, please grant us your wisdom and protection. Grant us the knowledge that we can handle and keep us safe from all things that will harm us. Keep the messages positive and pure love. Keep us safe from our egos. We ask these things in the light of the seen, the unseen, and the honesty of God. Amen. Mr. Carnegie, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us this evening. You did quite a bit for mankind, and we would like to get that information out to other people. So would you like to begin with a message?
Yes, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to come through tonight. I haven't really had a chance to talk to anyone on the other side since I passed over 100 years ago. So I consider it an honor and a pleasure. I was very lucky. I was at the right place at the right time. I met the right people. And I did have the sufficient business drive to be a success. In those days, it was difficult to get ahead, but if you knew the right people and were right in the right industries, it was very possible to do so. I felt that America was the greatest country in the world, and I felt that our industrial revolution was taking place, and that railroads and steel mills were basically the future to our industrial production. I did much, I accomplished much, and at the end I tried to give back for what I did. It was a wonderful life. I did many wonderful things, met many good people, and at the end of my life, I'd succeeded in giving much to others. So I thank you for having me, and I know you have some more questions.
We do. You emigrated here from Scotland at the age of 12. Did your Scottish background have anything to do with your success?
We were very poor in Scotland. We had to leave in order to make a living. We were also very good at squeezing a dollar. We were very poor people when we came over. My first job, I made like $1.20 a day, or $1.20 a week. It was very, very difficult times to exist in the United States or anywhere else. Scotland was a wonderful country, and I went back in my later years after I had made a little bit of money. We actually owned a castle over there, and it's a wonderful place. My heart really found a home in Scotland, just as it did in America.
Could you tell us about your early education?
I had very, very little formal education. In Scotland, we were very poor. We did try to borrow books and read. My parents, they were not well educated, and they tried to do what they could do. When we came over here, I tried to learn on my own. Once in the United States, I had better access to books and to education. I spent a lot of time reading. I tried to teach myself. It was, as I said, a very, very difficult time.
Okay, you moved to Allegheny County, Pennsylvania in 1848. What was it like in western Pennsylvania when you moved there?
It was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Allegheny County was a great place because you had the Allegheny River and Monongahela formed the Ohio. We could use water transportation to move items. It was also a rail hub. It was a great place to do business. It was also a place of growth. There were many people trying to find work. The economies would be up, they would be down. But there were many, many people that were looking for jobs out there, and there was much skilled workers. There were many people that wanted to work in the steel mills. I tried to provide steady employment for them, and I think that I succeeded.
What was your first job?
I worked threading bobbins in a fabric mill. As I said, I earned almost nothing for it. It was very unskilled. They often used young people to do the job because adults would not agree to do it. It was a very difficult first job, but I did the best I could at it, and I advanced from it.
Could you tell us who Colonel James Anderson was?
Colonel Anderson was a wonderful person. He realized the value of education, and he tried to make books available for the young. He had several hundred books in his library, and on a weekend he would allow the younger people to come in and borrow his books to read them. He would try to give a little bit of instruction. It was not a time where we had great public education, and he allowed us access to information that we could have never learned.
What role did the railroads play in the American economy during the 1850s?
The railroads were just coming into their own. They were providing a means of mass transportation. You could load a lot of equipment, heavy items, onto a railroad car. Pennsylvania had been a pioneer in railroads. The Pennsylvania Railroad was the largest in the country, and they provided the future of transportation. It was impossible to move heavy loads by horseback or any other method, so the railroads really provided what we needed. If we had not had a good type of transportation, we would have never been able to accomplish what we did.
Could you tell us about going to work for the Pennsylvania Railroad?
I started out as a telegraph operator and then was asked if I would like to have a job with the Pennsylvania Railroad. I advanced pretty rapidly with them, made some good contacts, actually became a superintendent. I learned as much as I could about rail transportation. I also realized that steel was the basis for making the railroads work. Steel was required for bridges, rails, the making of the cars themselves. I became interested in steel making at a very early age and thought that it was true that steel would truly be the answer to the future for the industrial growth of the United States.
You began investing in railroad-related companies at a very early age. Will you tell us about those investments?
I was very lucky. I made the right friends, and these friends introduced me to investments. Now, keep in mind that this was a time that inside information was really critical. The people that ran the railroads understood who was going to be getting contracts. They understood where the growth would be. For instance, the making of Pullman cars. They understood that people wanted to travel long distances and they needed comfortable cars to travel in. The people that I worked for showed me how and in whom to invest. Now, I know many of you would consider that insider trading, and yes, it was, but times were much different. I did take advantage of the tips that I was given, and I was lucky enough to amass enough money so that I would be able to bring to fruition a lot of my dreams for the future.
How prevalent was corruption in the running of the railroads?
Pretty prevalent. Everybody was basically related. They knew what was going on. They knew that if they kept it like a club, that the opportunity for making money was almost unlimited. People would give business to friends. That's just simply the way it was back then. The government was not interested in trying to keep things independent. The government was simply interested in expanding the economy. To expand the economy, they needed railroads. I think many of them suspected that a civil war was coming, that there was going to be no way, and that railroads would become instrumental for that. So, yes, you could call it corruption, but we did put the money to good use. Now, we did acquire fortunes, and we did give much of the money back to try to help the people. So we made jobs. We did many things. And much of it was based on the relationships and inside information that we had.
Will you tell us about your belief in God at that time?
I had many different beliefs throughout my time on Earth. I always kind of felt that there was a supreme deity, but I did not agree with a lot of organized religions. I felt that much of what they taught was not accurate. I thought that religions often misled people. I did believe. I'm glad I did, because when I returned I found out that you better believe. But My problem was with organized religions. It wasn't necessarily with God.
So did you believe in an afterlife?
I was unsure. I know people talked about seeing ghosts, and I know that I would receive dreams. So I felt that there was an afterlife, but I really had no idea what it was truly like.
And you were drafted into the Army at the beginning of the Civil War. How did you respond to that?
I wanted to help the country, but I did not want to go into the Army. My friends had been talking about how important the railroads were going to be, and I wanted to stay with the railroad system. So when I was drafted, I paid an individual to serve for me. In those days, you could give an individual money to serve, and early in the war, they were looking for bodies, and I had the money to buy an individual to go fight for me, and that's what we did.
Okay, why did you leave the railroads to become interested in the ironworks?
I felt that iron was going to be the key to making everything go. After the Civil War, it was a time of huge expansion for the railroads. There were many people that were firmly established in the railroad industry, but there were few that were really working towards making the raw materials, the steel that was required to make the railroads work. I felt that it offered a great niche. As I said before, railroads don't run without rails. That's where they get the name. So steel was incredibly important to the expansion of the railroads, and I felt that if I could position myself in that industry, that I would be very successful.
You were very wise. You wrote, "Man must have no idol, and the amassing of wealth is one of the worst species of idolatry." Why did you come to that opinion?
I always felt in my heart that people had to give back. There were many of us that were blessed with true immense wealth, but there were also many people that were struggling. I felt that it was the responsibility of the wealthy to use their excess wealth for helping others. In those days, there was not much of a social net. Government did not do much to provide for people that would have problems with income levels. There was really no controls over depressions. It was a free market. People could manipulate those markets. I always felt that we were gifted to make great wealth. That was a gift that we needed to share. If we did not share that, then many people would go hungry. Many people would not be able to find jobs. Many people would go uneducated. I felt that the educational system needed a huge amount of help. That was why I started to make books available through libraries. In those days, there was no computers or internet, so books contained the wealth of information that people needed to advance. Without books, I felt that it would be very difficult for the population to learn and to advance to the jobs that were required. Keep in mind that we were rapidly growing through the Industrial Revolution, and we needed skilled workers. Those workers needed education. Production lines were getting more and more difficult, and there was just simply a lot of reasons why I felt that everyone should have access to information, to learning. I did all I could.
You did indeed. Tell us about the relationships between the rail and steel barons of the time.
They were very closely related. Great amounts of money had been made in the railroad industry, and those of us in the steel industry supported the railroads. It was really a very tight-knit group. We knew each other. We knew who was in charge of what, and we tried not to do things that would conflict. Because of the relationship of the rail and steel barons, the rail transportation system rapidly crossed the country. Even though there was much collusion, tariff protection, that type of thing, we succeeded in creating a foundation of an industrial complex that was soon to lead the world.
Could you tell us about favorable tariffs concerning the steel industry during this time?
The government was involved with what we were trying to do, and they wanted the steel industry to increase. At that time, Great Britain was the leader in in iron and steel production. We felt that if the United States could take the lead in that type of industry, that it would build the prestige of the United States throughout the world. It did. We produced more iron and steel than Great Britain, and we truly became the industrial leaders of the world.
Do you believe in protective tariffs in today's economy?
Yes and no. I think that American industry has to be protected. There are countries out there that use slave labor. There are countries that can produce materials very cheaply because they take advantage of their populations. There are countries out there that absolutely do not care whether their people are leading a decent life or not. I think that the country and our industry needs to be protected from that type of country. Now, there are situations where tariffs can hurt because opposing countries can retaliate. The retaliation will raise the price of goods, and the consumer is the one that suffers for it. So there's a time for tariffs, and there's a time that there should be none.
In 1901, you consolidated your holdings, formed the United States Steel Company. When you sold, your share was the equivalent of $7.35 billion in today's money. What do you consider the main reason for your success?
I worked very hard. I studied. I took advantage of the relationships that I had. I truly figured out what the best route was. I thought that steel was the place to put your money. I did a lot of innovation in my business. I did what was known as vertical integration. I bought iron mines. I bought steamers. I bought what I needed to transport the raw materials to my plants. I tried to build a unit where I controlled all aspects of my business. If necessary, I would buy out competitors, but that was not the chosen route that I chose. I did many things. I tried to have a loyal base of workers. There were times that we had difficulty with them, but in general, I attempted to make a living wage available to anybody that wanted one. I tried to treat my employers or my employees as best I could. I did many things, but most of all, I think that I was guided by God to succeed so that I could use the money to help others.
Okay, one of our listeners would like to know, what do you think of the wealthy elite today?
I think that greed has taken over. There are many, many incredibly rich people today, but I would point out that in my time, I had more money than they did. They are using their money to make more. They're trying to influence the public. They're trying to do things with the money that I never really tried to do. And they're drawing away from charity. There are many countries where the truly rich only worry about themselves. If you look at the truly rich in Russia, for instance, you will see that they have huge yachts, that they do much. They have 10, 20 homes, and they do absolutely nothing for the people of Russia. Until the people that have the great wealth decide that the individuals in the country in which they live have got to be taken care of and cared for, there's going to be there will be continued turmoil, there'll be continued poverty, and there'll be continued war where people are trying to gain the wealth that others have. It's truly a very, very difficult thing. Our current really wealthy people are very reluctant to give. Now, there are some of those that set up foundations and pretend. I've watched from the other side as individuals have said that they care about the people, but you'll find that a lot of the foundations today have got political motives, that they simply are trying to serve the well-being of those that created. It is a time of great wealth for a few. Those few could pass that on to the many, and the world would be a much better place. I hope that in the future people will open their eyes and understand that they have to help others. I can tell you this. When those people pass, they are not going to take one penny of that wealth with them. They'll be sorry that they accumulated it all and did nothing. I know that it is very easy to believe that the opulence in which they are living is all that there is and all that matters. I can assure them from the other side that it doesn't work like that. The people of great wealth would be far better served if they would devote a vast percentage of that wealth to helping others.
Thank you. What was your opinion of the British monarchical system and the government?
I felt that a monarchical system was much less effective than the republic system that the United States had. I felt that we were better suited to compete in the world. I felt that we were much more flexible in what we could do, and I think that we proved that we were. Great Britain is a wonderful country. Scotland I love. I still hang out there at times. But I think that the equalities that we attempt to obtain in our republic can build the strongest nation in the world and can make our nation capable of sustaining the growth that has made it so important. All right, let's take a little break here. We'll be back in a bit, and then we'll have more of Mr. Carnegie.
Don't go away. Chatting History will return right after these brief messages.
order for the light to shine so brightly, the darkness must be present. Tune in every Monday at 10 o'clock. The Dark Sun Rising on the Para-X Radio Network.
Hi, this is Marla Brooks from Stirring the Cauldron. Thursdays are a great night on the Para-X Radio Network. We start off the evening with Journey into the Light, Chapter 3, with your hosts, Psychic Little T and Tabby Cat Gash at 7 p.m. Eastern. Then, on the first and third Thursdays of the month at 8 p.m., it's Tango and Friends, hosted by Bruce Tango. And on the alternate Thursdays at 8 p.m., tune in to Stirring the Cauldron, the Archive podcast. Every week at 9 p.m. Eastern, join me on Stirring the Cauldron Live. And then at 10 p.m., stick around for New Aeon Now with Lily Alley, Davron Michaels, and Christine Matza. Finally, to round out the night, join Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz on the Paranormal Encounters podcast. All this every Thursday, right here on Para-X.
Have you ever wondered what Jesus and his followers would say if you could receive their messages today? In his new book, Spirits Speak, Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirits, channeler and author Barry Strohm answers those questions for you. Using his gift of spirit communication, he brings you messages from such Holy Spirits as Moses, John the Baptist, Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, Jesus, and even Mother Teresa and the Reverend Billy Graham. They discuss topics that are important for contemporary life in these troubled times. Spirits Speak, Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirits is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other booksellers. Signed copies are available on the author's website, spiritspredict.com. After reading this book, you will never again say, "What would Jesus say or do?" Welcome back to Channeling History. Now, here are your hosts, Barry and Connie Strohm.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Connie, let's have some more questions.
Okay. Andrew, what's your opinion of the current form of American government?
The governmental system has definitely changed through the years. Today, government has grown beyond any capable understanding. There are so many different departments. There are so many technical departments that can create headaches for anyone really trying to do things. In addition, the two political parties refuse to cooperate, and that certainly makes it more difficult for industries to predict what is going to take place. The republic system that is our country needs to just simply learn to cooperate and do what's best for the people. While we may have taken advantage of the system and we truly accumulated great wealth, we were doing things that provided jobs, that provided welfare, that provided many things. The railroads were instrumental to transportation. Without that transportation, there's no way that the country could have expanded and sustain the level of living conditions that they had. Now, there were many problems. Believe me, the government, when I lived and worked, was not free of collusion. There were many, many people trying to steal money from the government, but that's no different. Look at your politicians today. Where else can they go take a job that pays $150,000 a year and come away with millions and millions of dollars? The people have got to hold the elected representatives more responsible. I think that if the electorate spends more time studying the politicians, more time selecting those that they feel will do the will of the people, that the United States will continue to prosper and grow. If greedy individuals take over the government, forget the will of the people, create poverty, create inflation, destroy the middle and lower classes through inflation and poverty, then the country's in for a big problem.
I agree. What was your opinion of American imperialism, especially the purchase of the Philippines?
I thought that the country had absolutely no business trying to expand. They were trying, in those days, to expand the sphere of influence. They purchased the Philippines, Panama. There were a lot of things that were taking place. I felt that by trying to create an empire, they were walking into the same problems that Great Britain had faced and was facing at the time. I felt that we needed to simply focus on the huge landmass that was the United States. We had plenty of raw materials. We had plenty of natural resources. We had everything we needed to be great in our own country. We did not have to export or import anything. I've always felt that imports were more of a luxury, that we should depend upon our own internal structures and resources. Imperialism, I felt, would undermine what was the true greatness of America.
One of our listeners would like to know, why don't you come back and show big business how to do it right? Is there a possibility you might do that?
There's a possibility. I'm actually thinking about returning, but keep in mind, when one decides to return, it is not an immediate thing. But there's a distinct possibility, and I am truly thinking about it.
Good. We could use you badly. You created over 2,500 public libraries. Could you expand on why you felt that was so important?
I felt the library system was the only answer to providing information to all that wanted it. Now, I understood also that there are many that didn't want information, but it was not a time that public colleges were everywhere as they are today. Today you have these huge institutions. Some of them are good, many of them are bad. Many people come out of these institutions with a degree that will mean nothing to them in finding a job. I felt that by providing books of varied information, an individual could read and could study the subject that interested them the most. The library structure served a great purpose. Now today, with the internet, people are looking for information online, and things are being a little bit different. But it is only through the access of free and unfettered information that individuals can learn, can strive to better themselves, and can truly train themselves to lead better lives.
Okay, back to the chat room. Were you and J.P. Morgan friends? And if so, what is or was your opinion of him?
J.P. was a piece of work. I considered him a friend. I knew that he was a friend that you had to watch over your shoulder, but I did truly consider him a friend, and we did work out a fairly sizable deal.
Okay, and another question from the chat room. What did you think of Charles M. Schwab?
I thought that Charles had limitations. I thought that he knew some of what he wanted to do. We had never really been that close.
Okay, what do you think of our public education system today?
I think it's good, and I think it's bad. What the government has done to the educational systems in the large cities is a disgrace. They're providing low-class education to those that need education to advance the most. Many of your colleges today have become ideological structures. They're more interested in expounding political dialogue and thought than they are in teaching information where the free exchange of thought is more important than the concept of the professors. Now, there are some good institutions. I hope that the one that I started, Carnegie Institute, would step back a bit and become more non-committed politically. But it is a trend of the times. I hope that there will be a time that the leaders of the institutions truly understand that free thought is much preferred to indoctrination.
Yeah. So you're not happy with the way things are currently at Carnegie Mellon?
They could be better. I think, like with most of the large institutions, political thought has entered where it would better be kept on the sidelines.
Did you believe in aliens?
Actually, I did. I talked to people that swore they had seen aliens. I talked to people that swore that they had seen these large ships in the sky. I had never encountered any of them personally, but I absolutely believed that they could exist.
Andrew, would you tell us about your wife, Louise?
I married Louise late in life. I took care of my mother as long as I could, and then after her passing, I decided that I would get married. Louise was 20 years younger than I was, and we had one child. But she was a wonderful person. I truly enjoyed being with her. We had a good life together. As I look back, I wish that I'd perhaps thought about marrying her earlier. She is with me over here on this side, and I have nothing but good things to say about her.
That's wonderful. You did much to promote world peace. What do you think should be done to promote it today?
I was very naive about world peace. I felt that world peace was common sense. I thought that if you helped enough people around the world, that it would naturally lead to a peaceful situation. Today, there are elements that just simply hate each other. The Jewish people hate the Palestinians. Palestinians hate the Jews. Iran hates everybody. It's a very, very difficult situation. The access to weapons of mass destruction have given relatively small countries great powers. I would hope that all the world leaders would stand back and understand the true risk of mass destruction. There are many countries now that are capable of instigating it. I would hope that wise heads take over and solve the desire for mass destruction.
Were you psychic, and did you receive messages from the other side?
I would receive messages in dreams. I do feel that I might have had a little bit of psychic abilities, but I never ever considered that I had the abilities that the two of you have.
Are you on the 7th level in heaven, and were you sent back to give to others?
Yes, I was sent back. I was told that this was what my goal was, and I tried to do my best. There were times that I did things I probably shouldn't have done, but I was sent back to help others, and I believe that I truly succeeded at it.
Andrew, would you have a message for those who have accumulated great wealth but refuse to give back and help others?
I would tell them that there's going to be a time when they come back. And if they were sent back to accumulate and given the gift of great wealth and refuse to help others, they will be judged quite harshly.
Okay. Did you and your associates share any blame for the Johnstown flood of 1889 that killed over 2,200 people?
I was a member of a sporting society that owned the lake that where the dam breast broke. I did not realize just how weak the dam was. I had heard talk that it needed work, but nobody seemed interested in the group of putting the money into it. So I would say that through lack of judgment, that I was partially to blame for it.
Okay. What was your opinion about labor unions?
I thought that labor unions helped raise the cost of production. By raising the cost of production, we would be able to have less money to help others. Labor unions were both a blessing, and there were times that I truly wanted to eliminate them.
Okay, you were one of the first industrialists to use vertical integration in your steel and mill supplies chain. Will you tell us about that?
I did it. I bought everything that I needed to come from the raw materials in the land to produce the stuff in my mills. It was a unique concept at the time. I know that Rockefeller would buy out its competitors, but I felt that my business would be better served if I controlled all aspects of it.
Do you think that there will ever be world peace?
Sadly, I don't. There never has been world peace. And with the trend of hatred that you see around you today, I think it's going to be more difficult than ever to obtain.
Yeah. Did you believe that you were fair with your employees?
I tried at times to be very fair with my employees. I thought that there were also times that the employees were trying to take advantage of me. I wanted a successful employment pool. I wanted them to work hard, and I wanted them to have a standard of living. Unions introduced what I felt was greed into the labor pool, and there were times that I reacted adversely to it.
So what would you say to those that say you should have used your great wealth to increase the wages of your employees?
I would say they're probably true. I felt that I always knew that I wanted to use my great wealth to help others. I tried to accumulate as much of it as I could so that I could help as many as I could. I felt that I paid fair wages. I felt that the unions were pushing for wages that were not fair. I guess that in some instances I was certainly wrong, but in the long run I did help many people.
How did you get to know Henry Frick?
Henry controlled an aspect of the supply chain. Henry was an insider. He knew what was going on in the steel mills. He knew how to run the mills. He knew what I wanted to accomplish. Henry could be a very, very difficult person. There were times that I liked Henry, and there were times that I could have shot him. Henry felt that violence was going to be the answer for the strike at the Homestead plant. He hired Pinkerton agents to break it up. There was great violence. People were killed. A lot of negative publicity. I was out of the country at the time. If I think if I had been back in country, that I would have stopped him from calling in the Pinkertons on this. the violence became so bad that they actually brought in the army to stop it. It was a time that I received very bad publicity. I look back at that and I wish it had never happened, but Henry was the one that was in charge.
Yeah, he evidently offered the workers a 22% decrease in wages, and that's what set the violence off. Did you approve of that offer, or did you even know about it?
He told me he was going to do it. I said you could use it as a negotiating ploy, but do not stand firm upon it. It will do nothing but create ill will and violence. He took it as a definite requirement for the negotiation, and it set off terrible reactions.
Okay, the Carnegie dictum, it was to spend the first third of one's life getting all the education one can, then to spend the next third making all the money they can, and then the last third giving it all away for worthwhile causes. Do you believe that dictum should be followed today?
I think the concept should be followed. It doesn't take a 30-year life to be educated unless you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or something of that nature. You need to be well educated. A person needs to learn all that he can. He needs to learn how to handle people, how to treat them. He needs to learn how to be kind to people. He needs to work very hard, and there's a time of your life where you do that. Then there's a time of your life as you grow older that you should use the wealth that you've accumulated to help others. I think that is a very, very strong thought that should continue. I think that doing unto others as you would have them do unto you is a very good rule. If you follow that, I think that your life can be very happy and that you will help many others in the process.
Do you think that wealth brings more happiness or unhappiness?
That is up to the individual. In most instances, you'll find that great wealth brings terrible problems. It can lead to emotional distress, unhappiness. Generally, the children are the ones that pay the price of great wealth. They become spoiled. They don't think for themselves. They rely on others. They become nasty. I mean, if you look at the children of the wealthy, you will see that the great wealth has really not been a benefit for them. If you use it to help others, you will find the happiness beyond anything that you can compare.
Do you believe in survival of the fittest in business?
That's a tricky question. I think that the fittest will be the survivors because of their great knowledge, their ability to handle other people. The more that you study, the fitter you will be for business. The fitter you will be for business, the better your chances for success. The better your chances for success, the better the opportunity to help others.
When you returned to heaven, how were you greeted?
Generally, I was applauded. I had helped many, many people through my charities, through my libraries, through my colleges, through everything that I did. I did do some things for which I was judged. The violence towards my employees was not a good thing. But in general, I was very well greeted.
Okay. Do you have a final message for us?
Yes. I would like to thank you for allowing me to come through. I hope that people still listen to my words. I have some pretty good advice. I made many mistakes. Who doesn't? I was forgiven for my mistakes because I helped many, many people. It was a very good life. I accumulated such great wealth that I was able to help many. There are many today out there that are capable of helping as many as I did. I would hope that those people would be influenced and that they would follow my example. I can assure you this: helping others is a true virtue. That's what God wants of you. It's what He wants all of the people to do. If you help others, your judgment when you return home, and we all return to heaven, your judgment will be fine and you will advance. Those who have accumulated great wealth will find that it is not going to be nearly as comfortable when they arrive on this side. So thank you for having me. If you would ever like to speak again, I would be more than happy to do so.
Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. I've definitely enjoyed being able to communicate with you.
Okay, everybody. I thought that was incredibly interesting tonight. He probably helped more people than anyone else I could think of, especially more people than these individuals with great wealth are doing today. So anyway, next week, change of pace, we're going to be interviewing Charles Darwin. His concepts of evolution changed how we look at the developments of humans. It's going to be really interesting to see what he's going to think about the future potential for the development of the human race. You can submit questions or recommendations for future shows in advance through our email. That's channelinghistoryonparax@gmail.com. Short commercial, my new book, Spirit Speaks Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirits, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold. We have it on Kindle for only $2.99. Signed copies are available on the websites, spiritspredict.com and Words of God Then and Now. We're currently doing 2 other podcasts. On Wednesday mornings, we do a weekly message from Jesus. And on Sunday mornings, we do a show called Eternity Speaks, where we channel devotional messages from all the Holy Spirits. This morning we had an incredible message from the Blessed Mother Mary. All of the shows that we do are available on my YouTube channel and can be seen on many of the other platforms. So thank you for joining us. We're here every Wednesday. I'm here every Sunday. I need to get off of these drugs I've had for the sickness. So anyway, thank you for listening. We'll be back again next week. God bless, and we'll see you then.
And I would also like to thank you all for joining us. We appreciate that. Have a wonderful week. God bless you all.
Thanks for listening to Channeling History. Tune in again next week for another electrifying episode, as we never know who will make an appearance or who will come through the portal. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2020. Our Story Begins by Kevin MacLeod, licensed through Incompetech.com.